Okay. Okay, let me start the session. So in today's session, first we'll focus on just overview of SAP Fiori app development and how to go with help documentation. So navigating through help documentation, that is very, very important. And then we'll try to understand different types of templates. And what are the different files that are auto-generated for those templates. For example, SAP Fiori master detail template and SAP Fiori worklist template. So these are the main things that we'll try to focus in today's session. So first, let me start with one simple diagram. How exactly a Fiori application has to be developed, what type of options we need to use. And then we'll start with how to identify various options required for developing an application and where those options are available under help documentation. And then finally, we'll try to discuss what are the different types of templates, what is the output of those different templates that we'll be discussing in detail. So first, let me start with this. So yesterday I've already explained, but let me just complete this simple diagram. Here you can see, if you're trying to develop SAP Fiori application, SAP Fiori application internally will make use of SAP UI5 framework. And not only that, a Fiori application will make use of SAP Fiori templates, or you can make use of SAP Fiori elements. They're also internal templates. And along with that, we are going to make use of OData services. So one application can have all these different options. You can include UI5 framework, Fiori templates, or Fiori elements along with OData services. But if you go into SAP UI5 framework, SAP has provided several libraries here. Something like library 1, 2, 3, etc. So there will be collection of libraries here. So a framework contains collection of libraries here. And inside each library, there will be some list of classes. For example, class 1, 2, 3, etc. You can just imagine like this. So there will be collection of classes here. For example, library 1, you can get some collection of classes. Library 3, you may get some collection of classes. And not only that, I can say each class contains several options here. Properties, methods, as well as events. Every class technically contains these options here. Properties, methods, as well as events. For example, if you take class 1, you'll find these three options. You can take any class, it contains all these options here. Properties, methods, as well as events. Okay, let me just write a simple note to develop SAP Fiori like application. As a developer, we make use of SAP UI5 framework plus SAP Fiori templates plus we'll be using SAP Fiori elements and OData services. So all these options, we can use it ultimately to develop an end-to-end Fiori application. Now coming to UI5 framework, I can say SAP UI5 framework is collection of libraries. And each library contains collection of classes. Each library contains collection of classes, and each class contains something like properties, methods, as well as events. These are the main options. There will be constants, but that we'll discuss at right time, don't worry. But these are the main options: properties, methods, and events. So there are some list of libraries which you need to remember for Fiori development. So you need to remember this list of libraries. One of the main library is SAP.M library, and this is the base and default library. If you develop any Fiori application, ultimately it has to use SAP.M as a base and the default library. On top of that, we can use SAP UI Core, SAP.UI.model, SAP.UI.layout, and SAP.UI.layout.form. That's another library. SAP Suite UI microchart, and SAP.viz. That's another library. And similarly, SAP UI Unified. So these are the important libraries for developing any kind of Fiori application. SAP.M is a base library. On top of that, we can use any other libraries whenever, wherever required. SAP UI Core, SAP UI Model, SAP UI Layout, SAP UI Layout.form, SAP Suite UI Microchart, SAP.viz, and SAP UI Unified. So these are some of the 7 to 8 important libraries. Most of the applications are developed using these things. And not only that, I can say, I want to make use of OData services. So in OData services, as I told you earlier, so OData services mainly contains database functionalities. So like, for example, select query or insert, delete, update. So this type of operations, we are going to write it inside OData, and then we are going to consume that OData service in the front end. Select query, insert, delete, update. So this type of operations, we generally put it inside OData services. And not only that, here you can see inside OData services, there are three types once again. So I can say OData ABAP service, OData HANA-based CDS service, HANA-based CDS service, and OData external service, OData external service. But ultimately, all these services contains database operations. Okay, let me write it here. ABAP service, or it can be HANA-based CDS service or an external service. But ultimately, a service contains database functionalities here. Now, not only that, SAP Fiori application will ultimately use one of the templates. SAP has provided two main templates. One of the main template is SAP Fiori master detail template, or you can also call it as SAP Fiori split app template. Both are same. SAP Fiori master detail template, or you can also call it as split app template. And similarly, if required, you can use SAP Fiori Worklist template, or we can call it as SAP Fiori full screen template. Both are same. Okay, so let me just highlight that here. Different types of templates. So, as I told you, first one is SAP Fiori Worklist template, or you can call it as SAP Fiori SAP Fiori full screen template. Then second template is SAP Fiori master detail template, or you can call it as SAP Fiori split app template. This is an alternative word. These are the two main templates here. And not only that, SAP has provided SAP Fiori elements. Very recently, they have provided some Fiori elements, but they are also internally templates. For developing applications which look like reporting. For reporting purpose, we can use a template or a Fiori element like list report here. List report is one of the Fiori element. It is mainly used for reporting. If you want to develop or if you want to convert your ABAP reports into SAP Fiori reports, then we can make use of a list report, and that list report is part of Fiori elements here. And not only that, there is one more element, that is overview page. This also you can use it for reporting. Overview page, here you can have reporting, and you can have something like charts, etc., for displaying the data. Okay, so ultimately, whenever you see a Fiori app is included with all these options. Framework, templates, or elements plus OData services. Okay, so there are two main elements, that is SAP Fiori list report element. This is mainly for reporting purpose. So in reporting, you will have something like selection screen plus output table. So if you use a list report template or list report element, you will get selection screen by default plus an output table. You can take the input from the end user and you can send the output to the end user. So input is selection screen, output is table. So this type of template is nothing but a list report element here. And similarly, we can also use SAP Fiori overview page. This is also used for reporting purpose, but here you can have charts, analytical charts, bar chart, line chart, waterfall chart. So those type of charts also we can include at the time of reporting here in second Fiori element. But now how to refer the documentation? Say suppose I want to understand more about this, then help documentation will be suitable. So official SAP help documentation. So in this documentation, you can get some idea. What exactly is this framework? What are the list of classes? What are the list of libraries? What are the various templates? So etc. etc. You'll get some idea when you refer this documentation, but how to refer that? How to navigate through that documentation? Let us understand that. So here, let me open that. SAP UI5. Here you can see SAP UI5.hana.ondemand.com. SAP UI5.hana.ondemand.com. That is an official SAP website for UI5 Fiori applications. So in this documentation, you can see there are some options: tools, apps, samples, reference, and documentation. Now, say suppose if I go to samples first. So under samples, if you see here, you can see there are some list of screen elements. There are, I said, almost more than 150 screen elements will be available. More than 150 screen elements will be available here in this particular documentation, and you can use whichever you want as per your requirement. Now, say suppose here you can see button. It contains a separate class with library. Button is a class with SAP.m as a library. Not only that, you can see link. It's a class with SAP.m as a base library. And not only that, you can see there is a bar chart. SAP.m is a default library. Icon tab bar, it's a class, contains SAP.m as a library here. So not only that, you can see panel. Panel is a class available in SAP.m library. Most of the screen elements are part of SAP.m library. And you can see here, there are some options like this one. Dialog box, value help dialog. So there is one library here. And not only that, you can see microcharts. Microchart. So there is one library, SAP Suite UI microchart. And area microchart is a class name. And this class is part of so-and-so library here. Now, not only that, there is a table. Let me go to that. Here you can see there is a responsive table. Responsive table, and table is also a class under SAP.M library, the most important for Fiori applications. And there is list screen element, most important, and it is also part of SAP.M library. Responsive table, list, these are very commonly used. And then you can see there is a simple form. Simple form is a class, but it is part of SAP UI layout.form library. And similarly, you can see there is PDF viewer. It's newly introduced. PDF viewer is also a class, which is part of SAP.M library. Like that, you'll find almost more than 150 screen elements will be available. More than 150 classes will be available. All these things you can use it for developing the screens. So you can see object number, object identifier, object attribute, object status. So there are several screen elements like this. And not only that, you can see image. Image is a class which is part of same SAP.M library. You can see label. And you can see something like feed input. That's also one of the screen element. Formatted text. It's a screen element, part of this library. And similarly, here you can see there are different types of layouts. Horizontal layout. You can see simple form layout. Horizontal layout. And you can see grid layout. So these layouts are part of SAP UI layout library here. Horizontal layout is one of the class, but it is part of SAP UI layout library. And you can see vertical layout. It's a class, part of SAP UI layout library. And there is splitter layout. Splitter layout, it's also part of SAP UI layout library. So there are different types of layouts, but every layout contains a class. And similarly, list, you can see there is table. Table, we call it as a responsive table here from SAP.M. And not only that, there is a dialog box. And similarly, you can see here, you can see calendar. That's one of the class that is part of SAP UI unified library. And you can see something like combo box, date picker, and checkbox. So there are different classes for different screen elements. But most of the screen elements are part of SAP.M library. You can see checkbox, combo box, date picker, input, mask input, multi-input, multi-combo box. So there are different screen elements, part of different classes available for different screen elements, but most of the screen elements, they are part of SAP.M library here. You can see radio button group, range slider, you can see that, search field, drop down. Drop down is nothing but select screen element here. Select is nothing but a drop down screen element. Sliders, you can see switch, time picker, text area. So most of these screen elements, we are going to use it wherever required in our development. So all important screen elements will be used in our training. But the most important and default library will be sap.m here. On top of that, we are going to use other libraries as well. So this is a website. Let me just copy this for your reference. Now, I want to access a library or a class or properties or methods. Then how to identify that? So let me just give some simple shortcut procedure. In order to identify library, class, property, methods, what you need to do is just go to this. Go to this and select sample section. Samples, I think, yeah, samples section. Under that, left side, you will find list of screen elements. Select one screen element here. For example, table. So here you can see this samples. Under samples, you can see there is table. Okay, you can see there is response to table. Response to table, that's nothing but table. So after selecting that screen element, here you can see you'll get class name, left side library name, and you'll get API reference. That is important for us. There is API reference here. You need to select this API reference. Now, when you select that API reference, you'll get properties, aggregation properties, association properties, but ultimately these three are properties. Not only properties, you'll find events. With some help documentation, you'll find events, and you'll find methods of that class. So every screen element contains a class, and every class contains properties, events, and methods. So this is the area where you can access all these options. So what you can do is, after selecting that screen element, select API reference of that screen element. For example, sap.m.table. Select that. Then you will find all these options. You'll find all these options: library name, class name, property name, method names. So this is how you can identify these options in our documentation. Okay, let me just take this simple screenshot. Okay, so here, API reference. For example, I've selected this, and you can find the same option with API reference. You need to select this. Select API reference of that screen element or a class, whatever. In order to open library, class name, properties, methods, as well as events. this is the approach you need to follow. And when you select this, you'll get all these options here. So on selecting that, ultimately, you'll get this. Properties here. All these are properties. Regular properties, aggregation properties, and association, but ultimately they're properties. There will be a slight difference that we'll be discussing at right time, not now. And you can see methods. So all these three important options for every class you can identify in this manner. On selecting API reference here. Okay, just as a table class. Now let me take one more screen element. How to identify that? Let me just start with this SAP UI file. For example, I want to identify some other screen element. For example, checkbox. Here you can say go to samples, and you can also type here checkbox, or else you can search it in this list. Somewhere you'll find checkbox at the bottom, I think. Yeah, you can see checkbox is a screen element. Now here you can see there is hyperlink for selecting API reference. There is hyperlink for selecting API reference. Now on selecting that, here you can see on selecting API reference on checkbox, you'll get list of properties, list of events, list of methods. So you can find all those options here. Okay, let me just add this. So on selecting checkbox, you can expect your screen element properties here, methods as well as events. And this is your library name, and this becomes your class name. And on selecting API reference, you'll be able to get all these options. Okay, so that is how you can access any screen element. Let me add one more option here. For example, list screen element. Here you can see there is something like list screen element. Let me go to this. Here you can see this. And list screen element is also part of SAP.m. You can select API reference to get its options. Properties, then association properties, aggregation properties, but they're properties. Events as well as methods. So add this one last option. You can follow the same procedure for any screen element. So in documentation, what we're trying to do, go to sample section, select that screen element, and here you'll find API reference. Just you need to select that reference to get its options. Just let me add this one last one. List also is a class, or you can call it as a screen element, which contains all these three options. properties, events, and methods. These are important for us while writing the code. So you can take anything under this category, any screen element under this category. If you want to explore any option, ultimately, this is a strategy you can follow. Go to this link, go to sample section, left side, select screen element, and select one of the screen element, select the API reference of that screen element, then you'll be able to identify all these options. Library, class, properties, methods, events, everything you can identify here. Now, this is one thing that is very, very important. After training, if SAP is releasing some other new libraries or new classes, then how you will navigate through the documentation. This is how you need to navigate. In my absence, also, you can explore new concepts after the training whenever SAP releases some new screen elements or new classes, but ultimately this procedure remains same. This is how you need to explore. And how to identify the documentation. That means how to identify the sample source code of various screen elements. This is also important for us. So every screen element contains some sample code, which is already provided by SAP. So for every screen element, SAP has provided some sample code. So how to identify that sample code? So don't copy paste that sample code. Sample code is just for reference. If you directly copy paste that code, it is not going to work at all. We have to start from the beginning. We have to start from the scratch level with a proper syntax. So how to write the code, that we'll discuss later, don't worry. But as of now, in order to identify the sample source code, what you need to do is, again, you can go to this. You can go to this website and again, select sample section. Left side, select screen element of your choice. For example, checkbox. Checkbox is a screen element. So let me select that. Under that, here you can see here. There is sample section here. You can see this. Under sample section, let me just go to checkbox. I want to get the source code of that sample source code, which is provided by SAP. So let me select that. Somewhere here, you can see. Now, this time, you should not select API reference. Don't go to API reference. Instead, go to the sample section here. There is some description about checkbox. There is sample code for checkbox. You can see this. Don't go to API reference. Just go to sample section here. There are two samples for checkbox. So here you can see. So what we have done, under this particular link, we are selecting a checkbox. And for checkbox here, you can see we are going to sample section, not API reference. Directly go to this and select one of the option here. After selecting that, you'll get the source code of the checkbox. Here you can see. So you can use checkbox in different types. Checkbox with box, checkbox with warning symbol, checkbox with red color, checkbox with blue color. So there are different types of checkbox. But what is the source code for this? If you want to get the source code for this, here you can see there is an option. Show source code. Select samples tab. Then select show source code. Sorry, select samples tab and select one of the option. Then select show source code. Here you can find that. Right top corner, you can see this. Show source code for this sample. That means for this checkbox. So that's an option. That's an icon available. Select that. Then you will find source code of that screen element. It can be checkbox, it can be table, it can be list, drop down, combo box, any screen element, image, drop down, slider, time picker, date picker, calendar. You can get the sample source code for every screen element. But don't directly copy paste that. It is not going to work directly. So we have to understand the syntax first. Then only you can easily understand this documentation. So first, let me go to this here. Show sample source code. Okay, here you can see on selecting that, you'll get the screen here. This is the option. This is an icon and it says show source code of this sample. Then after this, you'll get the source code of that. Here you can see. You can go back or you can come to the sample source code. Now, here SAP is trying to tell you there are different types of checkbox in this framework. Whichever checkbox you want, you can use it. But for these different checkboxes, there are different types of properties, different types of options used here. You can see that. So on selecting source code, you can see you can have a checkbox coding like this, or you can have a checkbox coding like this, or you can have a checkbox coding in different forms. You can see that. So you can create different checkboxes by writing different lines here with different properties. You can see that. Just I'm highlighting that. But I'll be explaining the syntax from scratch level. We are not going to copy paste directly like this. We are going to start from the scratch level. We'll try to understand the syntax. Then we'll start writing the code line by line. Okay, but this is how you can refer the documentation. Sample source code, we call it as. Now, say suppose I want to know about some other screen element. For example, list screen element. Then what you can do? Let me come from the beginning. SAP UI5. This is official website. So under this particular website, you can go to sample section. And here, I want to understand the sample source code of list screen element. I want to get that code. So here you can see there is list. Under that, you can see there is sample section, about section. There are two options here. And don't go to API reference for this. Instead of going to API reference, go to sample option here. And there are different samples here for list screen element. Now select one of the sample. Select one of the sample here. So there is a list screen element. List will display output like this. If you select different samples, you'll get different list outputs here. This is also the output of list screen element. This is output of another list screen element. So this code will help you only to some extent. You need training, you need some bit of practice and all those things. And this list is not going to get data from backend. You need to understand how to get the data from backend, because in real time we get the data from backend, but this sample source code is not going to interact with the backend. So the point is, sample source code will help you only to some extent. You can't directly completely depend on this source code. Why? Because this source code will not interact with the backend, but in real time we have to interact with backend. That is what we need to understand in the training. Okay, so for example, you can select one sample source code here. Okay. Let me just take this. Very important. So that's the reason why I'm repeating this again and again. So I've selected list. Then you're getting samples. There are different samples. You can select one of the sample here. After that, you'll be able to get this. For example, I'm selecting one of the sample and this output of that sample. But how to get the source code of this sample? Go to this. Now here you can see you're getting the source code for list. Internally, they are using standard list item. So this is a simple source code here. Okay, let me add this. On selecting sample, you'll find this. This option. And this is the option for opening the source code. You can identify that from here. There is some tooltip you can identify from that. All these things will help you in screen designing. And you can see now, if I want to select another sample, you can go back, you can select something like this. And here, there is another list screen element output. So you can see that and you'll get the source code of that. So here you can see, just for screenshot purpose, let me copy this. So here you can see after selecting list, you're getting the list code here. That is sample source code. Don't depend on this. This is not going to help you. It will help you in understanding the class name, internal screen element, the property of that, what type of properties to be used. In that way, it will definitely help you, but not 100%. From list screen element, or you can call it as list class. Now, what about table? Let me just highlight one more option. For example, table, responsive table. I can search it, but let me just select from here. Okay, you can see there is responsive table. So don't go to API reference, go to samples here. There are 18 samples for showing the table output in different options. Table output with a different options. So there are some 18 samples here. For example, you can see first sample, you can see there's a table output. Table output looks like this. But this data is not coming from backend. But in real time, we have to get data from backend. That is the challenging part. And that is what you are going to understand in detail in the training. How to write the code from scratch level, how to get data from backend, how to display data in the front end, how to deal with all database operations. So that we are going to understand in the training. So don't 100% depend on the documentation. Documentation is going to help you only up to 30 to 40%. Now, here you can see there is a table with the different options. There's a table with the different options. Here you can see. Now for this table, you can go to source code. Under source code, you can see there is a table screen element used here. Here you can see there is a table screen element and other properties. So you'll find some source code here. It will be very easy when you start from scratch level. Line by line, if you start writing, then it becomes very easy. The editor will also help you. Okay, let me just take this. Responsive table is a table under sample section. In this documentation link, go to samples, select one of the sample, and then you'll be able to find it. This option. Because in my absence, this helps you. I may be explaining 80% of the screen elements, but if some screen elements are newly released, you can also have an understanding from this particular documentation itself. Okay, so now I hope you got the point. Go to this link, sample section, select screen element of your choice, select samples tab, select one of the sample, and then show source code of this sample. Then you'll find the source code of that screen element. So it can be table, drop-down, checkbox, radio button, image, whatever. But this is how you can identify. Now, I want to get the standard icons. How to identify standard icons provided by SAP for SAP UI5 Fiori development. How to identify that? Let me just give some simple procedure here, because in different examples, we'll use different standard icons. For standard icons, again, you need to go to the documentation here. Yeah. Hello, students. Can you hear me? Can some of you confirm?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Unmuted.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so let me continue. So here you can see there is tool section. There is something like tool section here under the same documentation. Okay, go to this. Then select tool section. Here you can see tools. Under tools, you can see we are going to use something like Icon Explorer. In Icon Explorer, you will find standard icons. So let me write that. Select Icon Explorer. So that's one of the options. Then it opens a separate screen, something like this. Under that, you can see there are SAP standard icons here, the left side. Select SAP icons. It's one of the options that you'll find left side. And then after selecting this, you'll be able to identify the several standard icons provided by SAP, which we generally use it in UI5 and Fiori development. You can see that. Icon with icon name. Those things you can refer in your coding whenever, wherever required. These are all different icons. Okay, so, or else you can directly go to this link. You can also directly go to this link otherwise. Instead of navigating through, you can just go to this link. Okay, so here you can see, you can select any icon, you'll get its name, and the icon name is accept, but it has to be used with a prefix SAP-icon:/. So that's a complete name for that icon. You can see this. Let me take this. So here, I've selected one of the icon. And what is the icon name? So that you'll get it here. This is icon name, SAP-icon:/. The actual icon name is accept in this case. So that icon name as it is, you can use it in your coding for developing UI5 and Fiori applications. To get name of standard icon from documentation, you can refer this. Say, for example, this one. There is an icon, approvals. You can see that. So I've selected this option, approvals. That's an icon. But the actual icon name, this should be the actual icon name that should be used in your coding. Use this name in coding. Whenever, wherever required, we are going to use that. Okay, I hope you got the clarity on how to identify icons. So that is important. Now, not only that. Okay, let me just complete this. Icon Explorer, SAP icons, and you'll find the icons, of course. Select one of the icon. Then you will find the name of the icon right side. So that is how you can identify standard icons. Now, as of now, just remember, these are the three important options from help documentation at this level. In the coming days, we'll try to understand some more options after utilizing this, some of the libraries, some of the source code. After that, we'll try to identify some more options in the same documentation. Now, let me go back to these different types of templates. So there are different types of templates. Here you can see one is Worklist template, or you can call it as full screen template. So what exactly is this? Let us understand that now. So if we create SAP Fiori-like application using SAP Fiori Worklist template, then automatically below files and some folders are auto-generated. So by default, you'll get something like worklist view.xml file. And you'll get object view.xml file. So view.xml files, these are for screens. Views are nothing but screens in UI5 Fiori. In SAP UI5 as well as in Fiori, view is nothing but screen, or you can call it as a web page. Just remember this, don't get confused. View is nothing but a screen or an output web page in both UI5 and Fiori. So worklist view is one screen, object view is another screen. And not only that, every view contains one controller. Worklist view contains worklist controller. And object view contains object controller. And then not only views and controllers, there will be common files like component.js file. And not only that, there will be formatted.js file. And there will be style.css file. And there will be something like manifest.json file. And there will be i1a10.properties file. i1a10.properties file. And metadata.xml file. So these are the common files for every Fiori application. Component.js file, formatted.js file, styles.css, manifest.json, i1a10.properties, and metadata.xml. These are the common files for every Fiori app, even in real time. But if you create an application through worklist template, worklist view, object view, these are by default created. And every view contains a controller. Every view contains a controller here. In SAP UI5 as well as in Fiori. So each view is associated with a controller. Each view is associated with a controller. So view is for screen development. And controller, sorry, okay. View is for screen development with screen elements. View is nothing but screen. So we use that view for screen development by adding screen elements. List, table, drop-down, checkbox, radio button, date picker, time picker, etc. So we use all different screen elements. At view level, we are going to write that particular code. And controllers. Controller is for event handlers. When you click on table, what should happen? When you click on drop down, what should happen? So that code has to be implemented inside event handler. When you select a record in a table, or when you select a value in drop down, so what type of functionality should trigger? So that functionality you have to implement inside event handler under controller. And as I told you, model is nothing but an OData service with database functionality. So the point here is all SAP UI5 Fiori apps follows MVC architecture. Just remember this in detail. I'll be explaining MVC at right time. But in simple words, I can say All applications follows MVC architecture, model with OData service, controller with event handlers, views with screen elements. As of now, just remember these 3 points. In the coming days, we are going to discuss in detail about MVC. So there is model with OData service, controller with event handlers, and views with screens and screen elements. So ultimately, every application in UI5 Fiori follows MVC architecture. Now, let me go back to the template. Now, say suppose if I use second template, so that means if we create SAP Fiori like app using a master detail template, what will happen? If we create an application using master detail template, then automatically below files are auto-generated, something like master view.xml file and details view.xml file. And as I told you, every view contains a controller. So master view contains master controller.js file. Details view contains details controller.js file. So every view contains a controller. Don't forget this. Now, not only that, there are common files: component file, formatter file, style file, manifest file, I1810, metadata.xml file. These are common files even for second template. These are all common files. You can take any standard application also. In standard app also you'll find the same type of common files. Only views and controllers will be different. Now, how the output of these apps looks like, let me give one simple diagram. Let me close this. Okay, now, if I use Worklist template, how the output looks like. And if I use master detail template, how the output looks like. Let me make you understand that. So here, if you are using SAP Fiori Worklist template, so in general, what happens is you will find Worklist view here. That's nothing but a screen. We call this as first screen. Then, not only that, you'll find second screen also by default. That is nothing but object view. We call this as second screen in general. Now, by default, you'll get two screens, but in case if you want to create third one or fourth screen, yes, you can create. You can create a third view, fourth view, fifth view, etc. That depends on the requirement. By default, you'll get these two screens. On top of that, if required, you can add n number of screens depending upon the requirement. But here, in this case, I can say Worklist view looks like this. Each view is a full screen page here. Each view is a full screen page in this case. And between each of these screens, there will be a navigation here. 1 to 2, 2 to 3. There will be a navigation. And there will be a backward navigation as well. By default, you'll get for some of the views. And that navigation happens by using routing technique in our case. Navigation using routing technique. So screen to screen navigation happens in Fiori with the help of routing technique. By default, you will find these things, but if you're creating a third view or a fourth view, then you need to additionally apply these things on your own. How to do it, we are going to discuss later. But in general, you can jump from one page to another page through navigation with routing technique in Fiori applications. Even in standard applications also, you'll find the same options. Navigation is always applied through routing. Now, not only that, here in first page, by default, there will be an input screen or input form with a search field. And there will be output with a table. By default, you'll get this. If you want, you can remove that and you can develop from scratch level. So there will be an input form and there will be an output table, something like this. Okay, just let me complete this diagram. Okay, so here by default, you'll get something like record 1, record 2, etc. according to the configuration in the template. This is how it looks like. Now, for each record, there will be some navigation option here. User can select a record inside this table so that he can jump to the next screen. On each record, by default, there will be a navigation. So user can select a record. For example, third record is selected. User can select a record here. On selecting a record, you can navigate from first screen to second screen. So that type of functionality will be part of this template. And in second screen, what you can do is you can display. You can display selected record here. You can display selected record and you can place several other screen elements. For example, for selected record, I want to show items. Display items for selected record. For example, think like this. Then here also you can have a form with selected record details and you can have a table once again for showing list of items for selected record. So there can be another table and that can show list of items here for selected header record. So item record 1, something like this. Okay, then so you can show list of item records in the second screen for selected header record in first screen. Now, for item record also, if required, you can have a navigation. For each item record, if you want, you can apply a navigation here so that you can jump from second screen to third screen. So that we can do it. And on top of that, if required, what we can do, we can create a third view and we can place screen elements according to our requirement. And we can consume OData service for database operations. From any view, we can do this. We can place some screen elements, for example, table or list or check or charts, microcharts, etc., etc. Forms. You can place any screen element according to your requirement, and you can consume OData service for triggering database functionalities. So you can do it from screen 1. You can definitely do it from screen 1, and you can do it from screen 2, screen 3, or whichever. But technically, I can say whenever you create an application through SAP Fiori Worklist template, by default, you'll get 2 screens like this. If you want, you can create a third screen. But in this template, every screen is a full screen page. Every screen is a full screen page in this case. In one screen, you can show header records. In another screen, you can show item records. And in third screen, you can show some other information. So every app which is created through Worklist template, the output looks like this. So here, this template is also known as a full screen template. Because each screen or each view is a full screen page. That's the reason why we can also call this template, Worklist template, as full screen page template. So you'll get more clarity. Mostly in the next session, we will try to use one of the template and we'll start our development. Okay, let me save this. This is like just an overview of SAP Fiori Worklist template. Just an overview. We are going to do it practically. And for that template, these are the list of files I've already written here. Now, what about master detail template? How the output looks like for this particular template? Let us understand that. So here, say suppose if you are using master details template, then you'll get one single page here, one page with 2 views. There will be single page, but there will be 2 views inside that page. Okay, so here, this is how it looks like. This is one page. And inside that page, there will be 2 options with left and right combination here. So one page with 2 views. That is left side master view and right side you'll get details view. Both are displayed simultaneously in a single page. As soon as you load that application, it loads 2 views by default with left and right combination, master view and details view. In master view, by default, you'll get a search field for input. Something like this. And you'll get output with a list screen element. So here you'll find some list screen element. And that list screen element will show header record 1, 2, 3, etc. So some list of header records are displayed here inside a list screen element. Now, not only that, I can say for each header record, there will be a link here for navigation, for selection. There will be a navigation for selection here. Now say suppose if user is selecting one of the record, for example, third record is selected here. So for selected header record in details view will display that selected header record. Display selected header record automatically inside a form using simple form. So you can get the selected header record information here in details view. And not only that, you can expect table to display item records for selected header record. Table will display item records for selected header record. So you can expect that by default you'll get this, and you can show item record 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay. Something like this. So you can show collection of items for selected header record, and this will be a table format. It would be a table format here. And for each item record, if you want, you can enable selection. That is possible. You can enable selection here if needed. So the point here is when you take master detail template, you'll get left and right combination with two different views. Master view, details view, both are loaded in a single page. That's the only specialty of this template. Instead of full screen template, you'll get two views in a single page in this master detail template. And not only that, what we can do, if required, you can add one more details view. So something like third view. Let us make it third view or a third screen. So this is like, again, second details view, something like that. Or let us make it just third view to avoid confusion. So we can have a third view, and that third view can have any other screen element. You can place screen elements according to your requirement. For example, it can be table or list, form, charts, micro charts. We are going to use all these different options, micro charts, etc. And not only that, we can consume or access OData service for database operations. And this we can do it from any view. That all depends. You can do it from any view here. And between details view, on selecting item record, for example, fifth item record is selected. On selecting item record, what we can do is we can apply navigation here from details view to the second details view or a third view, something like this. And if required, you can come back. You can have back option so that you can navigate back to the first details view. So, but ultimately navigation happens using routing technique. So routing is applied for navigation irrespective of the template. And not only that, okay. So here, SAP Fiori master detail template, we are calling this SAP Fiori master detail template also as this template is also known as something like split app template, because one page loads two views simultaneously. With left and right combination. So that's the reason why we call this template also as split app template or a master detail template. So one page with multiple views, that is how it is loaded. Okay, so we are going to experience all these things, no need to worry. This is just SAP Fiori master details template. Now, for master detail template, whenever you create app through this template, these are the files that are auto-generated. Now, what I'll do is in the next session, I'll stop here. I'll stop this theory. And in the next session, we are going to discuss and we'll start the practical part. We'll try to understand the syntax for writing the code. We'll try to create a sample application from tomorrow onwards. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me now. Any doubts?
Vijay, this is Hitesh.
Yeah, Hitesh, what's the doubt?
Yeah. Can you go to documentation again one more time? And yeah, if you go to API reference, any one of the control element
here in samples.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
No, go to API reference. I want to see that while we have method that.
That's what. So here samples, I'm selecting screen element. I'm going to reference. Yeah, API reference.
We have here properties, methods, events. Like, what is the difference between property, methods, and events? How?
It's like properties are for adding the behavior. Properties for defining behavior for that screen element. Are you getting my point?
Okay.
And events is to assign event handler, so that it's like action. Event is nothing but like an action, so that we can trigger some functionality. And functionalities are written by using some different methods. If you want to change the behavior, then you have to use a method to change behavior of any screen element. Then we can use one separate method. So properties by default defines the behavior for the screen element, how it has to be loaded, which properties must be enabled, which behavior should be enabled. But events is like action. When you click on some screen element, then some action has to be triggered. That means it has to trigger some functionality. And while writing that functionality, we use some methods, whether consumption of OData service or triggering a database functionality or changing the behavior of the screen or changing the behavior of the screen element. So those things we can apply through methods. So methods are not triggered automatically. Methods are triggered inside the event handlers. But event handlers are triggered whenever user select a value in a drop-down, or whenever user select a record in a table, or whenever user select a record in a list. So then events gets triggered automatically. Are you getting my point?
Right. Okay. Can you go to one of the methods? Any method? Yeah. Like what values needs to assign? Like say if you go to aggregation, or how to know what values needs to assign? And maybe in aggregation is that. Can you go to aggregation?
Aggregation is not a method.
Yeah.
Aggregation is not a method. It's a property. So
yeah.
Here you can see
what type of values we need to assign. How do I aggregation?
That you will understand that you will understand. Within one single class, you can't get that clarity. But over the period of time, In the coming days, you'll understand, but aggregation, we use this property for something like configuring. As an example, I'm telling you, for configuring an entity set of OData service. So, for example, you are using a table. Table contains something like items as aggregation property. For that property, what we do is we try to configure like this, entity set. So, whatever records coming from OData service, those records will be displayed on table. So, items is an aggregation property. Generally, most of the time, it maintains configuration with entity set of your OData service. So, entity set will fetch and display data on that screen element. If you are expecting data from backend, then entity set is required from OData, and that entity set has to be assigned to an aggregation property. And not only that, there will be some other properties. Table has some other properties. For example, something like growing threshold. Growing threshold is one of the properties. It's a general property. It's not an aggregation property. For that property, I can assign 20. For example, if you use 20, then by default, each page will display 20 records. On selecting table with some new option, then it displays the next 20 records. So it will display the records page by page. So items is an aggregation property which always maintains a relation with OData service. But growing threshold is a normal property. You can directly assign a value to exhibit that behavior of that screen element.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let me complete. So I insist you to wait for some more days to understand this, because when we use a table, when we use a list, then you'll come into then you'll get a clarity on aggregation, association, how to use the methods. We are going to discuss that in detail. But as of now, just remember these basic points: aggregation for entity set and normal properties for something like direct values without OData, and there will be associations. This is for adding internal screen element. This is for adding internal screen element. So, for example, table is a main screen element, but it internally will use other screen elements like input. It internally uses other screen elements like input. It can use checkbox, and it can use, for example, it can use image inside the table. So these are all internal screen elements. So which internal screen element has to be used, that you can define through association here.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what I can do at this level. Yeah.
Okay, in aggregation, can you go back? It's a type they are defined. Each aggregation has different type, right? Like
that is a data type. That's a data type. That's what I'm saying.
How do I understand that? Okay.
Data type here, say suppose if you are using a property, for example, in a something like visible. For example, visible is a property, right? It contains a Boolean data type.
Right.
Let me complete. So visible is a property. It contains a Boolean data type. So while writing the code, we are going to use true or false. So if there is a property, for example, enabled is also a normal property. So it also is of Boolean data type. Type is nothing but data type. It is a Boolean data type, so you can use true or false. For example, on a table, we are using growing threshold. So that's a property, but it is of integer data type, something like this. Type is nothing but data type. So if it is an integer data type, you can assign 10 or 20 or something like that. So type is nothing but data type in the documentation. Data type for that property. Okay.
Yeah, this is properties that's okay. But how about aggregation? Because they are a type of class. So I'm trying to understand that thing.
No,
Like,
that understanding I'll be explaining. I'll be explaining
okay,
association. Don't worry about aggregation association at this level. Definitely you will not get clarity. I'll show it practically. Then I'll
okay,
explain the theoretical point. Especially there are some complex things which first I'll show practical part, then I'll go to the theoretical part. So aggregation association I'll be explaining when we use table, list, and all those things. So
okay.
almost that we will cover after almost 10 sessions.
Okay, so we will be
Okay.
referring to documentation when we do the practical.
Yes, of course. Yes. Without
Okay,
that, we can't do anything.
okay,
Okay. So I'm intentionally avoiding your question. Difference between association, difference between aggregation property. So I gave some 2 line syntax here, 2 line statement, but that statement will not help you. We have to
Hmm.
go into practical. We have to go into practical part. At that level, we'll discuss in detail. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Then next doubt. Aggregation properties, association properties, we are going to discuss in detail after 10 more sessions. Don't worry now. Any other
Hi
technical
Vijay.
doubt?
Hi Vijay. Narayan Reddy here.
Yeah. What is the
My
doubt?
question was, we are using Worklist template and master detail templates, right? So there
Yeah.
we are using navigation. So up to how many screens can we navigate?
Any number of screens. There is no specific limit in the documentation. So any number of views we can have,
Okay.
because we don't know. SAP doesn't know how many screens you are going to develop. So they did not put any restriction. That is what I understood from the documentation. There is no limit on a number of views.
Okay.
I think there is no limit on number of views. Yeah. Next question.
Vijay, I'm getting the following error while opening the link. Yesterday you have given like localhost 80 for